we'll be going over IRS Form 1128, which is the application to adopt, change, or retain a tax year. So there are three parts to this tax form, and there are a wide variety of ways to be able to use this form. Virtually every tax-paying entity that you can think of can use this form to adopt, change, or retain a tax year for a wide variety of purposes. So in this example, we're going to lightly discuss kind of the big picture parts of this form, but when we go through the personal example of this, we're going to focus on an individual taxpayer, John Doe, who is looking to simply change his tax year from a fiscal tax year that was previously approved by the IRS to a calendar year tax year. So there are three parts to this tax form. Part 1, all taxpayers will complete Part 1, which is the general information field. So it basically outlines the taxpayer information, what kind of taxpayer entity it may be, and then just some kind of top level indications of what their situation is. And at the bottom of Part 1 is the signature field. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. In Part 2 are the procedures that you will complete under certain revenue procedures that apply to whatever situation the taxpayer may have. So there are several sections to this depending on the type of taxpayer entity and the type of, or the revenue procedure that applies. For example, Section A of this is for corporations that are not S corporations or personal service corporations. Those automatic approval requests would fall under Revenue Procedure 2006-45. Section B applies to partnerships, S corporations, personal service corporations, and trusts. Section C is for individuals. Section D is for tax-exempt organizations. So really briefly, an automatic approval request basically indicates exactly what it says. Under certain guidance, if the taxpayer is following certain guidance under the stated revenue procedure, then the IRS will automatically approve that specific request. So Part 3 covers situations in which that request might not be automatically approved, in which case you would need to apply for a ruling request. So, and this goes into a little bit more detail. In this case, all taxpayer entities will complete Section A. And if you're an individual that needs a ruling request, that's the only section you would complete. But there are a variety of different sections based on the type of taxpayer entity. So Section B would be completed by corporations. Section C would be S corporations. Partnerships complete Section D. Controlled foreign corporations complete Section E. Tax-exempt organizations complete Section F. Estates would complete Section G. And then finally, passive foreign investment companies fall under Section H. You can see that there are some areas where there aren't data information fields. That's because that specifically requires the taxpayer to attach a statement. So while we're specifically going to cover one example, we do break down all of the guidance, regardless of taxpayer entity, in our article, which we'll talk about at the end of this video. So let's go back to the beginning, and we'll start with Part 1 with our taxpayers' information. So at the very top, general information, our taxpayer, his name is John Doe. In this case, he's not married, but if he were, then you would enter his wife's name in here, and you would also enter his wife's name in the identifying number field. So John Doe's identifying number is his social security number. If it is a non-individual entity, then it might be an employer ID number. So either a social security number or an employer ID number. If you don't have an employer ID number, then you would need to file Form SS4, which requests an EIN, or you can apply on the IRS website. If you don't have a social security number, you can apply for one using Form SS5. We'll put links to both of those articles and videos in our show notes. So then address, the IRS service center where the income tax return will be filed. So since John lives in Texas, the closest service center is in Austin. And then his telephone number, if he had a fax number, we would enter it here. The remaining fields are for applicants that might be filing on behalf of a tax filer. So if it's different, then you would need to include the applicant's information. So this would be like for controlled corporations, things of that nature, like consolidated groups. So most individuals don't need to complete these fields. And then if you do have a contact person that's not the applicant or filer, then you would enter that information here with their contact information. You would also be required to attach a copy of IRS Form 2848, which is the power of attorney form. So we'll attach a link to that article and video in the show notes as well. So in line 1 or in section 1, we're going to check. You can check more than one box. For example, if you are operating a corporation, like a domestic corporation that's also a tax-exempt organization, you could do that, or a corporation that's also an HOA. But in this case, we're going to check the box for an individual because that's what John is. And then in part 2, we're going to break down exactly what John is asking. So in this case, there's a revenue procedure that allows for an automatic approval for individuals who may have previously had a fiscal year. So most fiscal years, fiscal year technically is an IRS term for any tax year that ends in a date other than December 31st of a calendar year. So the most commonly referred to fiscal year would be the U.S. government's fiscal year, which ends on September 30th of a tax year. So in this case, John's prior fiscal year was a fiscal year that ended on September 30th. So he is going to change to December 31st of 2023. He's going to indicate in 2B the date that the present tax year ends, which happens to be September 30th. And then the first short period return will be filed for the period between October 1st and the end of the tax year. So the concept of a short period means you have to file a tax return that does not span significantly more than that period of time. So in this case, if you have to file an extra return to bridge that gap, instead of filing a 15-month return that covers all the way between October 1st, 2023 and December 31st of 2024, you would break this into a short period return, which covers that gap period, and then now you're on the first complete tax return period would be for 2024. So in line 3, is the applicant's present tax year also the current reporting year? In this case, yes, and he's an individual, so he's got his own reporting method. He uses the cash receipts and disbursement method. If you use the accrual method, you would check this, or if you use another method like the hybrid method, which is a combination of cash and accrual, you could put that there. And then in box 5, you would simply state the nature of the business or the principal source of income. So he's an independent consultant in the sales world. So at this point, he would also sign the bottom of this if he's using a tax preparer. then the paid tax preparer would complete this with their requisite information. So do know that this is under penalty of perjury. You can be subject to applicable federal laws if you are, for some reason, trying to deceive the IRS. So that's the kind of disclaimer that the IRS puts on all of their forms. Now, when it comes to Part 2 and Part 3, you only need to complete the sections that apply to your specific situation. So instead of dragging you through all of these unrelated forms, we're simply going to identify the revenue procedure that this automatic approval request is filed under. So this would be revenue, and you can cheat by just using whatever's here next to the section that you're looking at. So in this case, this would be revenue procedure 2003-62, right? And they say or successor. This tax form hasn't been updated since 2014, but my research, I didn't find anything that was a successor revenue procedure for any of these. So in this case, he's an individual. Revenue procedure 2003-62 pretty much clearly states that you can change from a fiscal year to a calendar year. That's automatically approved. So you check yes, and there's really there might be some indication of additional information that's required. I'll take a quick peek at the instructions. Let's see. So for line 9 under this, we basically have if the answer to this question is yes, there's certain restrictions that are documented in Revenue Procedure 2003-62. So if they don't apply, you sign it, you file it where you normally file your tax return, and you don't need to complete Part 3. So in this situation, this would be a done deal. Now, if for some reason John has to indicate no, then he would then have to receive a ruling request. So, oh, by the way, if you have an automatic approval request, you would send this to where you normally file your income tax return. There is one exception, and that is tax exempt organizations that request a ruling. That address is changed. It's at the top of the form, the Ogden, Utah location for the IRS. So all other requests for rulings specifically go to the IRS National Office in Washington, D.C. So let's walk through the ruling request field for individuals. They only have to complete section A. They don't have to complete any of these other sections, B, C, D, all the way through H. There is a matrix that says, depending on what taxpayer entity is filing this form, which sections under Part 3 they have to complete. And we do have that in our article if you're interested. So we'll quickly walk through these questions. So is the applicant a partnership, S corporation, personal service corporation, or a trust? Well, he's none of those, and he's not under examination by the IRS. So he's going to check no for that. Has he recently changed his annual accounting period, specifically within the past 48 months? Nope. But it does explain what you do need to do if you say yes to any of these questions, or if you answer the not expected answer. So within the most recent 48-month period, has any accounting period application been withdrawn, not perfected, denied, or not implemented? No. Is the applicant requesting to establish a business purpose under Revenue Procedure 2002-39? No, he is not. No. But if your business purpose is based on one of the natural year business tests, there's additional guidance on what you would have to do to indicate your gross receipts from sales. Basically, the IRS wants to make sure that you're not doing this in a purposeful way to kind of hide income or shade income or force yourself into a different tax bracket than what you would already be eligible for. In section 5, in line 5, enter the taxable income for the short period. So in this case, the short period happens to be a quarter. So I just put down that John's income was $15,000 for that short period. The previous year it was $60,000, and the previous 2 years they were each $75,000. So it also breaks down for individuals. You would use adjusted gross income. Partnerships or S corporations would enter their ordinary income. 501c organizations would enter their unrelated business taxable income, so on and so forth. 6 is for corporations only, so we'll skip that one. Is the applicant a U.S. shareholder in a controlled foreign corporation? No. So we'll go to line 9. Is the applicant a shareholder in a PFIC? No. We do break that down into what those different entities are. So so this is a passive foreign investment company, I believe. Is the applicant a member of a partnership, a beneficiary of a state, a trust, so on and so forth? We select no to each of those. So you can go through all of these. If the applicant has any current requests pending with the national office, you would indicate whether or not you do. Is IRS Form 2848 attached to this? And this is kind of a checklist, because if it's not, then only the person that is on the application can correspond with the IRS on this. So, and then finally, does the applicant request a conference, which is a right with the national office, if they are inclined to disapprove the application? So that conference can be by phone or in person. And then you would enter the amount of the user fee, which there is a user fee schedule based on your circumstances. That's on the IRS website. So that's what you would walk through. Obviously, in John's situation, it's relatively straightforward, but we can go way down a rabbit hole if you really want to. And I would say if it's going down that deeply, for most taxpayer entities, they're going to hire professional tax preparers to do all of this paperwork. If you're kind of like a person that would like to do this by themselves, then the most likely scenario is the one that I just kind of walked through, with the fiscal year to a calendar year change for an individual taxpayer. So do proceed with caution if you're taking on anything with more tax significance than just a straightforward application. So, but there might be other situations where you feel like you're inclined to do this by yourself. Just understand that this is, a situation where you can get into trouble if you don't do things correctly. It might be worth that extra couple $100 to make sure that an attorney, or sorry, an accountant or an enrolled agent is taking care of you. So that's all we have for this video. If you want more details, we break down all of the situations in our article, which you can find on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 1128, and you'll see our comprehensive article. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're always looking for content to post videos on our YouTube channel. So if there's a question or a topic that you would like me to cover on a future video, please post that comment in the comment section as well. So thank you very much and have a great day.